So tell me about your family when you were a child.
But I grew up in Fowler, Michigan, and I had two brothers, and I have two brothers and two sisters. And when I was about 6 years old, my mom and my dad divorced. So it was very difficult for the family. But we grew up, we loved one another, even though we fought a lot. But you know, it was difficult in many ways, but I had a very normal childhood in many ways. I really loved sports. I loved to hang out with friends. I loved to do all sorts of things, and so I feel very blessed to have the brothers and sisters, and my mom especially, and my stepdad, and I'm very blessed with them.
So did you enjoy going to church as a younger boy?
I didn't hate going to church. I didn't particularly like it sometimes on the weekends, but looking back at it, I remember experiencing a peace while I was at Mass when in prayer that I didn't have when I was outside of church. And while I might not like it, there's something more here.
So people often change a lot in high school. In what ways was this true for you?
High school is a very difficult time for many people, and it can also be a very, very fun time. I mean, I actually liked high school a lot. You know, like I said, I played 4 years of football, 4 years of baseball, and I started dating when I was a freshman. And when I was in high school, part of that behavior problem I had didn't really go away. I was very much a very willful person. I loved to challenge authority, and I loved to make my will known. And in that sense, I was at risk of being kicked out of school for a little bit. Not many people know that, but I was at risk of being kicked out of school for a while because of my behavior. Well, what happened is that I broke up with one girlfriend, and I fell in love with another. And when I say I fell in love, I was taken by her, so much so that my behavior changed. She said, "You don't have to act out in order to get the attention." The attention I was seeking was being fulfilled by her. At some point during my senior year, I was invited to go to the youth group in Westphalia called the Ark. And it was there that I began to really examine my life in the context of faith. If God is real, what difference does that make in your life? And that was put to me in a very real and tangible way. And so I had to really examine how was I living. And I recognized that I had to make a lot of changes in my life. And that involved changes in my relationship with my girlfriend, changes in how I understood my behavior toward classmates, toward teachers, and all sorts of things. And that type of change was very important for me when I was in high school.
In high school, did you have any idea that you would one day be a Catholic priest?
Absolutely not. It was the furthest thing from my mind, because I thought I was going to get married to my girlfriend. I had always wanted to have a family, have a wife and children, and I just never thought of it. But it's when the relationship with God became real, in terms of when I began to engage God, who was already engaging in my heart, who was already pouring out His love in my heart. It is then that the possibilities of my life began to open up. Like, what are you calling me to do? Asking that question in the first place was something that I think a lot of high schoolers don't ask. And so I began to ask that question. But still, priesthood wasn't on the table. Like, I didn't even give him that option, because no one ever taught me to give him that option. No one ever taught me to give him my heart, to give him the opportunity to lead me where he wants me. God was really giving me the grace to respond to such a call. And that was some of the most difficult time in my life, because I had to make very difficult decisions, which included breaking up with the girl of my dreams.
When did you finally realize you were called to be a priest?
When I began to give God my heart in prayer, I began to discover that God was calling me to love in a different way. I had a very powerful experience on a Franciscan University of Steubenville trip during Eucharistic Adoration, in which I had this experience of God in which I knew two things simultaneously. One, that my sins were very displeasing to Him. The way in which I was selfish in my relationship, the way I was very mean, I was kind of a bully to some people in high school, that was very displeasing to God. But the second thing is that His love for me was infinite, and that He has forgiven all of that. And I was so in love with Him, I said, God, I will do anything for you. I want to live for you. It was at that moment that I really began to realize that He had been given me this great zeal, this insatiable desire to make Him known to others. And I began to see that really take over my affections and my heart. And I still loved my girlfriend. I still wanted to do all these other things. But I began to see that a lot of desire and a lot of energy was putting forward in learning about my faith and wanting to teach other people about it. And so therefore, I began to see that what I really thirsted for was Him. And so we broke up with one girlfriend, another girlfriend or another girl ended up kind of taking my heart in one sense. I dated her, never thought I was going to become a priest, but in the meantime, started getting this sense that God was really calling me to consider giving up her so that I can be his evangelist full time. And I very much did not like the idea. And so one time I was in prayer and I had this absolute, like, almost assurance that she was going to break up with me. And our relationship, there was nothing wrong with that relationship as far as I could tell. She comes home from a trip and she says, we need to talk. And I said, no, we don't. And I knew what she was going to say. She said, we need to break up. And I just remember saying, what's going on? Is another guy? Do you not like me? Is something I've done? And she ends up describing, she's like, it's not any of those. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I have to do this. Well, what I didn't realize until later is that I said in prayer, God, if you want me to be a priest, you have to have my girlfriend break up with me. And here she is breaking up with me in front of me, and me not making the connection that I actually prayed that in prayer. And I meant it. You know, you got to give me some sort of sign that is clear that you are calling me, who not really all that open to it, but had this desire to evangelize. Well, she breaks up with me, and then I realize, oh my gosh, God answered my prayer in the very way that I prayed. I'm not going to seminary. So I resisted, but I realized there was something missing. I prayed a novena to Our Lady. I said, you have to show me whether or not I'm called to be a priest. The novena, on the ninth day of the novena, Mary gave me a miraculous sign. As I was praying, the smell of roses overwhelmed me. I had to make the toughest decision of my life and break up with her to go to seminary.
Once you came to this realization, was it hard or scary to follow God's will for your vocation?
Absolutely. I mean, it was the last thing I wanted to do was break up with the girl of my dreams, the one that I just wanted to be with. And to break off and not finish college and to make that act of faith, I think is probably just as scary, maybe even more. I mean, perhaps of what Peter had to think of stepping outside of the boat onto the water when Jesus is saying, come to me on the water. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, in one sense, Lord, call me out in the water, which is what Peter was saying. In another sense, I have to walk on water? Like, give me a break. It seemed impossible. One of the reasons why I believed that I could do this is because there was something unfulfilled in my heart. How I understand and experience the call of celibacy is that I cannot be satisfied by a woman. And in a real sense, none of us can be satisfied by any human person. We were made for God. But there's a particular way in which my heart was made for God that I was not satisfied in a relationship. He was calling me in a different way of loving. And that's always scary because that means change. And so in a real way, there was a big test of my faith. Am I willing to follow him here? Am I willing to trust him that he's not going to let me down, that I can't outgive him in generosity? If I give my life to him, is he going to fulfill me? And I think that's a question that all of us have to ask. But when he invites you and gives you signs and he gives you this gentle tug of your heart, then you can't, and you know his love, you can't but not give your life to him. And so, that was the scariest thing I've ever done, the most difficult decision, but it was by far the best decision I've made.
So what were the seminary years like?
When I went to seminary, what was impressive to me but also relieving to me was that there were guys just like me, guys who did not grow up with this wanting to be a priest and they weren't praying about their whole life, but they had really big conversions and they wanted to know God's will for them as well. And so all of us, college age or right out of high school, came together in a big fraternity. And we had daily mass, I had Eucharistic adoration, I had a spiritual director, I had a formation director. I was going to school on campus, on a normal college campus, the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. And normal classes, I felt like I was in heaven. There's a sense in which I fell in love with Jesus and I fell in love with God in a deeper way, and I had never been happier.
So tell me what it's like to be a priest and what things you enjoy or dislike.
I absolutely love being a priest. When I was ordained a priest, and it was just, weeks in, I thought to myself, this is absolutely amazing. Like, I have never experienced a fulfillment like this before. Spending yourself in service of others and being spent and pouring your heart out and seeing God move hearts through your ministry is absolutely amazing. And as a priest, there's not very many things I don't like to do. People know that I absolutely love being a priest, and I'm not ashamed of that whatsoever. I'm so filled with God's joy. It doesn't mean that there aren't parts that are difficult. I don't like doing a lot of paperwork. I don't like doing a lot of work at the desk, unless it's, of course, related to some other ministry. But it doesn't mean it's not a responsibility of a priest. But what I love to do is spend time with people. I love to speak about the Lord. I love to challenge people. I love to preach. And I particularly found a great blessing in praying with people. God is just so active. He's alive. And when that light bulb turns on in people's eyes, when they experience God speaking to them and experience God loving them, that brings me all the more joy. And so praying with people, that's in the confessional, celebrating Mass is one of the most amazing things, because you are, in a real way, bringing the sacrifice of Christ, making that present for people to participate in and to receive Jesus. It doesn't get much better than that.
How have your struggles and experiences shaped your outlook on life?
The struggles are some of the most important parts of my life. For example, when I was studying in Rome as a seminarian, I contracted somehow this infection. I had a kidney infection, and I was hospitalized for 10 days. And at one point, the infection got to my lungs, and I had what's called a respiratory arrest, where my lungs stopped working, and I was struggling for breath, and I thought I was going to die. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, and I remember I was crying because I literally thought I would never see my family again. And I remember having this profound moment of conversion where I said, okay, Lord, I give you my life now. I'm excited that I'm able to see you soon. I really was preparing for death. That left me with a chronic health condition, which has been in some ways humiliating and in some ways, very humbling. But this is what it did. I was a seminarian on top of the world. I was filled with myself. I was all about my plans, what I wanted, my preferences. I was going to do what I wanted. And I still was a very, very proud person. I'm a very proud person now still. God is still working on me. But this transformed me to recognize that in the suffering, God triumphs and God is there. And I said to my vocation director, I believe that God inspired me to say this, I would not take it back.
Coming from where you have, what is some advice that you would give to young people living in today's world?
Pursue God with everything you have. I mean, God is your creator. He's the only one that knows you in the depths of your heart. And He ultimately is the only one that can fulfill you. There are so many different questions of who God is, who He isn't, whether or not He revealed Himself as Jesus, God, all these different things. These questions touch on some of the deepest and most important questions in one's life. Like, who am I? What's the purpose of life? What am I? Who am I? And what am I called to do in my life? And is there meaning? And God has the answer to all of that. And if you don't pursue God, you're never going to find Him, because only those who seek find. So my challenge is, don't use the cop-out answers of people who are irreligious and those who don't want to pursue God, because those are the people who do not want to have their own desires fulfilled, because they're going against their own humanity.